All right, and welcome to the second episode of our podcast. We've got a name now, Football Weekly, and as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Uzi Majid. Uzi, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Hamza. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. I think we'll jump into it today. We're going to talk through the main games of the weekend, and we'll start off with Arsenal and Nottingham Forest, which was a game I was at. I was at the stadium, my first home game for Arsenal this season. And, a lot to talk about here. I would say the first thing, funnily enough, that stood out to me was how much of a beast Murillo is in person. I mean, it's unbelievable seeing this guy in person. He looks like an action figure put in a football kit. I've never seen anything like it. Even the people around us were saying, this guy just looks completely out of place. But he is such a good defender. And on the contrary, Forest defending wasn't at its best over this game. And I think the main reason to my eye, and I think probably quite apparent on TV as well, was Ola Aina being out. It was a massive blow, his injury. And it meant that Morato played left back in this game. Morato, who played 26 games last season in the Prem, but all at left back, or all at centre back, I should say. So he's not a left back, and he was given the task of Noni Madueke, who was in his favoured right wing position and was just electric all game, especially in that first half. I was actually sat on his side, so obviously he was playing where Saka usually plays, and it was just brilliant to watch. I mean, he's exactly the opposite kind of player to Saka, which I think is great variety, which is what we wanted in this kind of the depth that we needed at right wing. We didn't want exactly the same player as Saka. We had that as Nwaneri last season, but Madueke, obviously a completely different profile, and he was on it all game. Took on his fullback pretty much every moment in the first half, and he wasn't just taking on his man the entire game. I thought he showed some patience at times. There was one moment in the first half he waited for Timber to overlap, another in the second half where he waited for Gyökeres and Gyökeres at the post. So I thought he showed good variety in his game, but obviously his skill set is just taking men on. And I think he said in an interview after the game that that's all he knows how to do, which is brilliant. It's fun to watch, and I think if he develops his inside game a little bit more, it will be, he's really looking like a great profile to have as a winger. I thought Eze on the other wing was good. He was solid. His first start, his first game at the Emirates. And he did have some moments, to be honest with you, that he lost the ball here and there in the first half. I think 2 or 3 times he tried some flicks. And, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that it's his first game. And overall, I thought, obviously, he got that assist for the second goal, but he's a very smart player, is what I noticed. He's not sort of reckless like Martinelli is, and that's no shade on Martinelli. It's just like Saka to Madueke, it's a different sort of profile, but I think he'll get used to that left wing position. He still needs some improvements on ball retention in that position, or at least what to do in certain situations. But, credit to him for coming in, and that bit of quality to get that assist to Gyökeres was absolutely brilliant. But just in terms of Forest, Uzi, are you worried with Ange coming in, breaking up such a tight-knit group from last season that did so well?
Well, of course, to lose Nuno like a few days before for such a difficult away game was always going to be a huge task in itself. I mean, the game itself would have been difficult even if he had been in the dugout. But I think to lose him, and Andrew would have only had maybe 3-4 days with them. The players themselves would have been in huge shock, having lost somebody who, cultivated such a tight bond and such a workman-like culture there. And of course, getting them into Europe for the first time in nearly 30 years, I think it was. So of course, it will have it will have hit them hard. I think they were saying on commentary how they wish, Ange probably should have maybe took over after this game. Look, it was always going to be difficult for Forest. Arsenal. I mean, I know they had lost previously just before the international break. It's still, it was probably the hardest game they've had all season. When you look at the opposition that they've played. But I think just going back to, would I be worried? Of course, it can be difficult because, it's obviously a new voice. I mean, I know Nuno was maybe there for maybe just under 2 years, but as I just said, he cultivated such a workman-like, tight-knit bond. And sometimes it can be really hard for somebody, even if Andrew might be, Premier League proven and a Europa League winner, it's still not easy to come in and I say immediately stamp your authority, but at the same time, try and cultivate that same bond Nuno did. Just we know is a pretty.
And not to cut you off, I think that it's very interesting. You see it there's two ways to see that, right? That there's such a there's such a bond in those players. There's such a cohesion to the way they play. You know, they don't necessarily do anything spectacular. There's no revolutionary football, but I think their players fit really well into their system. And I think for that reason, I'm not too worried at all about Forest and Ange, just because Ange doesn't really have to do anything. Doesn't have to do much at all. There's no changes to make. Nuno's signing wasn't down to performance on the pitch. It was down to obviously the rift between Marinakis and Nuno. There was nothing, glaring Nuno has to fix. And I think that team has got all the hallmarks of just having another good season. Solid defense, good midfield. Elliot Anderson getting even more praise now, more recognition. I think he's going to have an even better season. And I like the Ndoye signing for them on the right wing. I know Elanga is really difficult to replace given, how well he played last season and his qualities. From what I've seen from Ndoye the last 4 games, I've been impressed. It just wasn't their day. And honestly, coming to the Emirates, I've gone to many, many Arsenal home games over the last 3 seasons. It's a really difficult place to come at home to the Emirates. Not because of something to do with our atmosphere or whatnot, but just the way we play at home. We play with such confidence. And I thought Forest did well to sort of withhold Arsenal's pressure at the beginning. Honestly, that loss of Aina, in my opinion, was a big loss to them. And I think that was a key reason. But I want to ask you a question. Do you remember last week when we were talking about 2 disappointments and 2 positives? But one of the disappointments that I gave, do you remember who that was?
It was Pep, right?
Pep. And there was one more, a player who may play for Arsenal. Gyökeres. And, well, he silenced me today. I mean, Saturday, I should say. But, it's funny because I'm starting to come to terms with what Gyökeres is, he's not a game changer. And I say that in the best way possible because how many strikers in the world are? But what he does so brilliantly, and seeing this in person was such a credit to him, is he works so hard up front, but he still has that goal scoring knack to him, or that want to score. So he's like such a team player. His head never goes down when he doesn't get the ball or when he has to press. He leads the press. That's the kind of play. What more can you ask for a striker, just to give 110% effort every game with the intention of scoring? I was really impressed from his work rate, and he absolutely deserved that goal, even though he didn't have a plethora of chances. He took his chance when it came, and he worked super hard in that game. I think it shows really good depth in Arsenal squad. We knew that Arsenal squad has depth, but we were forced obviously into making changes this game with Gabriel, with Saliba out, with Saka out, with Odegaard getting injured, falling on that shoulder that he had injured before the international break. That we brought on Nwaneri, who was really solid. We had obviously Madueke starting in place, and we had Mosquera, who had a brilliant game. Mosquera looked so confident on the ball. For young centre-back coming in, your home debut against a good Forest team with a striker in Chris Wood, who was one of the top scorers in the league last season. He's rightly getting all the credit he deserves. It's good from Arsenal. It's like you said, we had a slip up before the international break, but this is almost exactly the sort of game that we wanted at home. Early kickoff. Let's put those doubts to bed and let's give our new signings a chance to show out, which they absolutely did. But yeah, let's move on to the Manchester derby. So I think a lot of talking points here. I want to ask you, Uzi, have United got worse under Amarin?
Well, they haven't got better, let's just say that. Yeah, I mean, it's no, Hamza, they haven't. And I know I'm going to say this. I saw this insane statistic this morning that I believe Amarin has lost more league games as United manager than Arsenal have lost in the last 3 seasons.
I saw that.
Which I had to double check it just to make sure, because not even like that. I mean, he hasn't even been there for a year. It's like, are you sure? It's like, and we know how formidable Arsenal have been over the last couple of years, but I didn't even think that was possible. But no, just going back to your question, no, they simply haven't, and
they haven't got worse.
No, so they have.
Right. Okay, yeah.
They have. They definitely have got worse. It's just purely down to a lot of it. I mean, Roy Keane, I didn't see all the post-match analysis. Roy Keane did allude it to some of the personnel. At the same time, all managers had to be adaptable. It doesn't matter how great or maybe young and inexperienced you may be. We've seen someone like Antonio Conte, for example, at Napoli last season. This is a manager who's more or less played 3 at the back for more or less the majority of his managerial career, right? he won Serie A playing a back four last season. This is somebody who's,
Just
as I said,
says it all, doesn't it?
yeah. I mean,
Says it all.
if someone like Antonio Conte, right, can make a pretty big tactical change. Somebody who's won pretty much everywhere he's been, one of the best managers around in the last 10, 15 years, right? If someone like him can do that, what makes Ruben Amorim some special case? I really struggle to understand that. You've got players who you're not getting Kobe Mainoo can't get game time. You're playing Bruno Fernandes as a holding midfielder with Mason Mount playing as a inside left inverted winger. And okay, I know he didn't play yesterday, but he had Ahmad playing on the left. He had Mbuma playing on the right as inverted wingers. It's just you can blame a lot of it down to personnel, but at the same time, as I said not too long ago, as managers, you got to be adaptable. You got to change. You got to change it up when things aren't going right. Thomas Frank. I mean, it was not just at Spurs per se, but even at Brentford, where he would play 3-5-2 at 3-5-2, and then maybe some games he would go 4-3-3 in games where he felt that he'd have a good chance. And actually, towards the end of his Brentford tenure, he actually shied away from playing 3-5-2 particularly against like the big, so-called bigger sides. Playing back fours against Chelsea, United, Liverpool, all at home. Liverpool incredibly more so, given that they were top of the league and absolutely ran away with it. But for him to be so stubborn and not show any signs of changing any things when you see where they are, things aren't getting any better, and they've got absolutely no excuse. It's like that you're playing one game a week. You shouldn't even be in the bottom half. All that money you spend on Cunha and Mbeumo, and nearly 120, 30 million between them, right? Sesko as well. Yeah, I forgot about him. You've got one game a week, and this is what you've churned up so far. It's not acceptable. And if you've seen the next couple of games, I mean, Chelsea at home, Brentford away, and I think Sunderland at home just before another international break. And then there's a small matter of Liverpool straight after it as well. So yeah, it's not certainly not good. Well, the results say itself, but I think his body language, saying that he won't change. He's just digging his own grave, to be honest.
And on that point of digging his own grave, I think two reports came out today. The first is that Amorim's willing to die on his sword. He's willing to die on this 5-back formation, or 3-3-4-3, whatever you want to call it. Which, to your point, it is stubborn. It is stubbornness. And I think the second report that United are willing to stand by Amorim, and those 3 games you said before the international break, those are going to be massive. They're going to be absolutely massive for Man United and Amorim. We've spoken a lot about the manager just now, and I agree with everything you said, but Man U is no secret since Alex Ferguson over the last 10, 12 years. It's been the same story, more or less. And that's why, in my opinion, it's not just the manager. And I think we all know it's not just the manager. Amorim has a lot of blame to take, because ultimately, when you're at a job in a job for 10 months as a manager, and we both watched the game, you saw little to no chemistry between players on that pitch, which for me is just unacceptable. If you can't develop some sort of chemistry between players, because at the end of the day, football, to play above the level of your players, or just to play well at a high level, you need relationships between players on the pitch. You need your right back and right winger to be working well. You need your centre mids to have a dynamic between them. You need your centre backs to have a dynamic between them. You need your striker and attacking midfielder to have a dynamic between them. And it looks like, watching United, it's just a bunch of individuals with no sense of what patterns of play to engage with. This goes down to the manager again, because a lot of these players, they're not used to playing in a 3-4-3. It's an unusual formation for them, just given how you play football when throughout your professional career. It's an unusual formation, so they look confused. Now, the players obviously have to take a lot of blame, because I remember there was one moment, many moments, but one stood out to me in the second half, where Diallo was running down the right wing towards the end of the game, and he got in a difficult position. I think a couple Man City players were around him, and instead of keeping the ball, retaining possession, passing back to Bruno or one of the United players in his vicinity, he decided to kind of keep his head down, do a little bit of a dribble, lost the ball, lost it again 10 seconds later trying to do that, and that's just pure selfishness. That's just players not trying to stick to a game plan, not really caring what happens. That was really poor to see. And even Mbeumo, who I think was probably the most dynamic out of any United player on the pitch, he looks a bit lost in that attack because it's so chaotic up there. And this formation, these players, this manager, it's not working. And, at another level, I think the board as well have to take a huge look at themselves, because I cannot believe Man U have gone into a season with Bayindir in goal. I cannot believe that. They've gone into a season with Bruno playing at centre mid in a 2. They decided to spend 180 million on a whole new front line and not strengthen that centre mid position, where you've got Casemiro, Ugarte and Bruno as your 3 main players, and not, as you mentioned, Kobe Mainu, a quality player, not being able to get into that team. So there's just so many problems with this team. And if there's one shining light, I would say, is it. I think the players are there. The quality is actually there in that team on an individual level. There's a lot of good players there. So if a new manager does come in, I think he's got things to work with. It's not necessarily that this squad is shaped under a 3-4-3. They can easily go to a 4-back if they need to. It is, how much lower can you get as a Man U fan? I'm not sure. I do feel for them a little bit. But, switching it, what did you think of City? Did you think they had a good game, or do you think it was just United's, a poor performance that led them to the win?
I'll be honest, I didn't think City really I didn't think they really needed to be flashy and, dynamic as some might have thought. I just thought maybe they just took their opportunities. I didn't think, we've seen City play a lot. I've seen City play a lot better than they have. So I didn't really think that they needed to really get out of second gear. I just think, because, they had, more or less, because they had creating, well, because they had obviously a settled, obviously midfield and attack. I didn't really think, we all know Haaland would get his chances anyway, and you would just need to just put 1 or 2 of them away. And obviously that ended up being the difference. I'll be honest, I don't think Amorim's United is a real litmus test of how well City will do this season. Don't get me wrong, it's a derby. Of course, they would have wanted to win for their own fans, and of course, none more so than for Ricky Hatton. May he rest in peace. So, of course, everyone's motivated to win a derby, but of course, when you've lost one of your own, who's sadly passed away, then it does give you that little bit of an incentive to just go out and win. But just going back to City, I think, I don't think we can, as I said, I don't think we can use Amorim's United as a barometer for their progress so far. But look, still a big derby win. They'll take that going into Arsenal next week in what should be a really good game. But yeah, wins breed confidence, especially emphatic derby wins. So I guess you take what you can.
Talking of litmus test, talking about that game next weekend, that is a litmus test for where Man City are against Arsenal. Arsenal at the Emirates, that will say a lot about both teams, really. I think even more so about Man City, because we know Arsenal in big games have been good in recent seasons. Let's see how City do, because I agree with you. I don't think they were that great, and I agree with what you said in that they didn't have to be that great. I thought towards the end of the match, they switched off quite a bit, because they didn't really need to be on it. United could have scored a couple of goals, to be fair to them. And, Haaland's looking good. He's looking hungry. I think he's going to, I said before the season, he's going to have a bounce back season. Bounce back, he still scored 20 plus league goals last year. But at Haaland's high standards, I think he's going to get close to that 30 goal total this season, I think. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that game at the Emirates next Sunday. I think that will tell a lot about both teams. And one thing that was fun to see, you mentioned it last week, how Donnarumma, you called him an intriguing signing. And it was always going to be a big test for him today, just because so many questions there's no question about Donnarumma's goalkeeping abilities in terms of his shot stopping. I think he's up there with Courtois as the best, just reflex savers, just goalkeepers in terms of goalkeeping ability in the world. The questions were, how would he do with his feet? And a little bit shaky, I guess, but nothing more than you'd expect from him, especially in his first game. I think he passed the test. He obviously made a great save from Mbeumo when City were 2-0 up. So, let's see how he does this season, but a good start for him. And just a little stat to end off with: the most Premier League goals versus Man United across the last 4 seasons by players. The top 2, Erling Haaland and then Phil Foden with 8 and 7 goals. So these two love playing against Man City, and they proved it again on Sunday.
You mean United, right?
United. What did I say?
Yeah, you said they love playing against City.
They love playing against United. But yeah, let's go with the Liverpool game earlier that Sunday. And interestingly, Liverpool are the first Premier League team in history, according to Opta, to win 4 consecutive games thanks to winning goals scored in the final 10 minutes or later. So obviously in the first game of the season, Chiesa, I know they won 4-2, but Chiesa scoring at 2-2 in the 88th minute against Bournemouth. Rio's goal in the 95th minute against Newcastle, you can't forget that. Schlotter's free kick against Arsenal, you can't forget that. And then obviously the penalty yesterday against Burnley. But Uzi, what was Hannibal doing? What was he doing?
I just want to see his bank account. I want to see if any money's going to come into it. I honestly, I couldn't, when I saw it back, I thought, did I just see what I just saw? I mean, I couldn't believe what he did. I don't know what possesses a player to put his hand up in a penalty. I couldn't.
I think inexperience from him. It has to be.
I mean, I don't know how old he is, but I don't even think an 18-year-old would do that. You know, at that stage of the game. But I just don't know what he was doing. You know, look, you take what you get given to you at any stage of the season. You know, look, Liverpool have, they've ridden their luck. I think it'd be safe to say so far.
But do you think it's luck, or do you think this shows, because when Real Madrid win late on in games, as they've done for the last, well, God knows how many years, but you call that the Real Madrid way, and you call that experience and confidence coming through. Can we say the same for this Liverpool team?
I mean, as champion, as Roy Keane, for a Man United great to say, that shows champion spirit. Absolutely agree. I think when you look at I think you want to look at all the games as well. So Bournemouth, I think, even though Bournemouth game, as we spoke about that game a while ago, they gave a very good account of themselves. But you still look at the chances Liverpool had. Could have maybe had a few more goals. You probably say that they did enough to win that game, even though Bournemouth did play very well that night. Newcastle, I'd probably say that let's be honest, they got away with murder that game. I mean, I'm not sure how Newcastle didn't even win, let alone not get anything.
Arsenal, I think with 11 versus 11 that game, that's a draw or a Newcastle win. But if my auntie had,
we'll leave it there. But I think obviously Arsenal. It was a very, we watched it together. It was always going to take a moment of magic to win that game, and Szoboszlai almost certainly did that with that free kick. Some will say they didn't deserve it, but it was one of those really trap games where whoever scored just say, fine, fair enough. It was essentially like last goal wins, and essentially that was it.
And do you think that Kirke's 38th minute substitution was the right call to make from Slot?
Well, I mean, when you look back, you're certainly justified in making it. That's for sure. It's been a difficult time for him since he's come to Liverpool. I think I think some are being a little bit harsh in there. You've gone from Bournemouth. Bournemouth, good club, good team, but you're joining the champions. It's not going to be a smooth transition, particularly to a side where you're expected to win every week, expected to challenge for trophies. I think the signing was fine from Liverpool. I think he's just having a bit of a rough time at the moment, but it's nothing unusual for new signings at bigger clubs. But I certainly think he'll be good for them in the long term. Although I do think his substitution was probably the right call, and certainly at the end of the game, certainly seemed a justified decision. Look, it's sometimes that that's how it goes. I think he'll be better for it. You'll look whenever things like that happen, they happen for a reason. So I'm sure he'll look back at it and he think, okay, what do I do next time? What not get myself in these situations. I think he'll be a better player for it.
I think he definitely would have learned a lesson from that. Slot's willing to make hard calls, and Liverpool have got the capacity to do that. They got a brilliant left back in Roberts on the bench, so I think it was the right call. And Liverpool have got Atletico Madrid at home on Wednesday. They've got Everton at home on the weekend, so we're going to find out a lot about them. I think these last 4 games, yes, it's late goals, but you do get the feeling watching Liverpool that they can do that. They have done that, and I think for me that's a strength. That's a massive strength in experience and confidence. And you can understand this slow start to a season in many ways. You've got, a lot of talk around Isaac. You've got new signings. You've got new defenders. So Liverpool, I think they'll pull it together. I mean, 4 wins out of 4. You Liverpool fans, they if you told them that at the start of the season, they're not going to ask, well, how are we playing? No, you take that and you go with it. And, they've been perfect since the season's begun. Speaking of another team that's been good as the season's begun, we've talked about Chelsea last week. They were one of my positives. And they played your Brentford over the weekend. What did you think? Obviously 2-2. A long throw, the set piece coach and Keith Andrews showing his prowess. In the 93rd minute, Carvalho getting that header to draw it. What did you make of the game? I think it was definitely the cliche, a game of two halves, but I think it definitely was. And I think Maresca's changes at halftime definitely made it so.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. I'm a little bit disappointed actually, because I thought we did enough to win the game. And I thought first half, I thought, as I said, as a game of two halves. First half, I thought we were brilliant. Got the goal, made it 1-0. But Jordan Henderson, man, all power to you. Yeah, I mean, that was an incredible ball to Sharda for the first goal, and even that aside, Hamza, he was great for like 90 minutes, and it was good to see he can last 90 minutes at 35 years of age. That was good to see. But I thought team performance was fantastic. Kelleher, I mean, that save he made from Palmer at 1-1 was incredible. I mean, I'll be honest, I thought he had scored. I mean, literally,
it was one of those where the ball's dropping down and you've accepted it before it's been hit.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I mean, I thought, oh God, not again. But then he managed to keep that out, and they made the changes at half time, and I think the golf in class showed it. See, Cucurella and James came on, and these are fullbacks we're talking. Those two came on, and then I think obviously Palmer came on as well. Completely changed the game. Well, for them anyway. So yeah, I think the changes for Chelsea certainly helped at half time. James and Cucurella coming on, and Palmer coming in 10-15 minutes into the second half. Of course, when you got that quality and depth on that, so that's always going to be a help rather than a hindrance. Of course, they made the changes. And obviously they made an impact. But thankfully, Fabio popped up right at the death and salvaged a point, which, to be honest, it was the least we deserved. I think, had we won, I don't think anyone would have complained. So to get a point when we conceded quite late on, I think it was around, I can't remember the exact timing of the second goal, but it was
93rd
around,
minute.
I mean the Chelsea one.
Second one. I'm not sure. Yeah,
I can't remember the second one, but to go 2-1 down at home quite late on and still come back and get the equaliser just shows the resilience and character in the teams. I was really encouraged by what I saw on Saturday, and hopefully they can take that in going to tomorrow's cup tie, and then these next few league games until the next international breaks. Definitely a lot to be pleased with. There's still a fair bit to improve on, but special shout outs to both Coyote and Lewis Potter. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Didn't really give the Chelsea wide players much of a sniff going forward. Lewis Potter always seems to have Neto in his pocket whenever we play them, so that's always nice. But I thought the centre halves did it as well. Joao Pedro, who actually started the season very well, actually. He didn't really get much of a sniff, so to nullify him was, pretty impressive on both Collins and Vandenberg's parts. Yeah, the defence was brilliant, of course, even in spite of the 2 goals.
And I think actually, in terms of defensively in that first half, I thought Igor Thiago actually defensively put in a shift in that first half. I think he was almost man-marking Caicedo all of that first half, and I thought it was a real 100% effort from the team. I think it was just those halftime substitutions and that strength and depth Chelsea have after spending billions over the last few windows, that they're able to do something like that. So I think it's just a credit to Brentford that they stuck in the game. And, like you said, no one could have complained if they got a point. They can't complain that they got a point or even 3 points had that happened out of the game.
Oh, for sure. I think definitely one of the most spirited performances we've seen this season. Definitely an improvement to what we saw at Sunderland and perhaps maybe at Forest as well. So I think they'll take the fact that they went toe to toe with a side who, as Gary Neville once called, the blue £1 billion bottle jobs. So to go head to head with them, and for all the money that they've spent, and still be competitive and get a fully deserved point, when even though it could have maybe should have been 3 on another day, I think they'll take that. I think whenever you play a big side after an international break, there's always that possibility you can always catch them cold. We did from most of it. Sadly, just couldn't get the win. But I think going forward, a lot to be encouraged by, and definitely a lot to take going into these next few weeks.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's it for today's episode. think it was an interesting week of football in the Premier League. I wouldn't say the other 3 p.m. Saturday games were anything to write home about. I mean, 2 goals across 4 fixtures. The 3 p.m. kick. Well, actually, excluding the Bournemouth-Brighton game, but 0-0 Palace Sunderland, 0-0 Everton Villa. Villa still not scored a goal all season. That has to come. That has to come soon.
As long as it's not tomorrow, that's fine.
Yeah. We're going to Arsenal, Brentford, Villa tomorrow in the cup. So, let's see if they break their duck then. But Tottenham 3-0 against West Ham. Like I said, you just don't know what West Ham's going to turn up. You don't really know what Tottenham are going to turn up, but Tottenham are showing much more consistency and doing well this season. So another clean sheet for them. And yeah, otherwise, looking forward to a good weekend of football next week. We've obviously got the Merseyside derby on Saturday and the City Arsenal game on the Sunday, which we'll dig our teeth into next week. But Uzi, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we'll end it there.